Welcome back to the podcast, everyone. Today, we're diving into a really sensitive and honestly quite critical issue unfolding in Southeast Asia, specifically involving Malaysia and the Rohingya refugee crisis. It's a story that highlights the incredibly complex tightrope walk governments face between humanitarian concerns and national pressures.
Absolutely, Adan. We're talking about Malaysia's recent statement regarding the repatriation of 5,000 Myanmar refugees. On August 5th, a government spokesman confirmed that this repatriation, which includes a significant number of Rohingya, won't proceed if their lives are found to be at risk upon return. It's a huge if, isn't it?
It really is, Angelina, and it's a very careful walk back, or perhaps a clarification, from what was initially a more straightforward plan. Prime Minister Anwar Ibrahim had previously stated that these 5,000 individuals were ethnic Rohingya refugees, and the move was apparently in response to rising tensions with local communities in Malaysia.
That's the crux of it, isn't it? The rising tensions. We've seen reports, about Rohingya refugee schools being shut down across the country. There's been documented harassment and threats towards Rohingya children. It paints a pretty grim picture of the situation on the ground for them in Malaysia, ironically, before even considering their potential return to Myanmar.
And it wasn't just schools, Caleb. Some refugees in Penang were even evicted from their homes and briefly detained. This happened after they gathered outside the UN Refugee Agency's building in Kuala Lumpur, seeking assistance. It shows a desperate situation from multiple angles.
It's heartbreaking, actually, to flee persecution, seek refuge, only to face harassment and eviction in what you hoped would be a safe haven. And now, the prospect of being sent back to the very place you escaped from, that's a profound fear.
Which brings us back to the Communications Minister Fahmi Fadzil's statement. He basically reiterated, very clearly, that Malaysia, as a responsible country, will not return the 5,000 Myanmar refugees if they would either be persecuted or their lives would be threatened. It's a strong commitment on paper.
But the operative phrase here is, if their lives would be threatened. How do you assess that? And what constitutes a threat? Because honestly, for the Rohingya, just being Rohingya in Myanmar can be considered a threat to their lives and existence. They've been facing what many call a genocide.
Exactly, Caleb. The burden of proof, I suppose, lies with Malaysia's Foreign and Home Ministries, who are currently reviewing this plan. They're identifying these 5,000 refugees. And Minister Fahmi also mentioned several matters that will be studied and discussed with the Myanmar government. That's another layer of complexity right there.
Discussing it with the Myanmar government is like asking the fox to guard the henhouse, in a way. The very government that has been accused of persecuting the Rohingya. How much genuine, unbiased assurance can they possibly get from that regime about the safety of returnees?
It's a diplomatic tightrope, Angelina. Malaysia has to engage with the de facto authorities, even if they're not recognized by everyone. They're trying to find a solution to a domestic issue, the rising tensions, while navigating international human rights obligations and the political realities of the region. It's not easy.
And let's be real, the rising tensions in Malaysia didn't just appear out of nowhere. There's been a growing anti-refugee sentiment in some parts of the population, often fueled by misinformation or economic anxieties. The pandemic, for example, really exacerbated these feelings in many host countries.
That's a really important point, Caleb. It's not just about the refugees, but also the socio-economic context in the host country. Malaysia hosts a significant number of Rohingya and other Myanmar refugees. And while they've been generally welcoming, there's a limit to what any country's resources and social fabric can sustain without pressure points emerging.
But at what cost? I mean, when you have children being harassed, schools being shut down, people being evicted, that's not just tensions, that's a breakdown in basic human decency and protection. It forces people to live in fear even in a supposed place of safety.
And it makes the UN Refugee Agency's role even more critical. These gatherings outside the UNHCR building, they weren't just random protests. They were people desperate for the protection and assistance that the UN is supposed to provide. When states like Malaysia are considering repatriation, UNHCR's assessment of safety is paramount.
It also speaks to Malaysia's non-signatory status to the 1951 Refugee Convention. While they've generally been a generous host, not having that formal framework means their actions are guided more by ad hoc policies and domestic pressures. This makes it harder for refugees to have their rights formally recognized and protected.
That's a crucial distinction, Caleb. So without that formal convention, it gives the government more flexibility, but also, arguably, less accountability on a global stage for refugee rights. The commitment not to repatriate if lives are at risk, while welcome, is still subject to their own interpretation and assessment.
And that assessment is the scariest part. Who decides what at risk means? Is it based on anecdotal evidence? Is it a general assessment of the situation in Rakhine State? Or is it a case-by-case evaluation for each of the 5,000 individuals? The devil is really in the details here.
Minister Fahmi did say several matters that will be studied, implying it's not a rushed decision. He also said Malaysia as a responsible country, which suggests they are acutely aware of the international gaze on this situation. They can't just send people back without serious scrutiny.
One could hope that includes a robust, independent assessment of the conditions in Myanmar, specifically for the Rohingya, because the international consensus from organizations like the UN to human rights groups is that conditions are absolutely not safe for their return right now.
So what are the alternatives here? If Malaysia can't repatriate safely and local tensions are rising, what's the long-term solution for these communities? Third country resettlement options? Integration into Malaysian society, perhaps with improved legal frameworks.
It needs a comprehensive regional approach, honestly. This isn't just a Malaysia problem, it's a regional and global issue. Other ASEAN countries and the international community need to step up with more support, resources, and resettlement options. Leaving it all on Malaysia's shoulders is unfair and unsustainable.
And within Malaysia, addressing the root causes of the local tensions is also crucial. Education campaigns to counter misinformation about refugees, fostering understanding, perhaps even involving refugee communities in initiatives that benefit both locals and refugees. It's a two-way street.
Exactly, because these are human beings, right? With lives, families, aspirations. They're not just numbers or a problem to be managed. The harassment and threats they're facing in Malaysia, the fear of what awaits them in Myanmar, it's a profound humanitarian crisis that requires a humanitarian response, not just a logistical one.
It's a stark reminder that refugee issues are never simple. They're always tangled in geopolitics, domestic pressures, and, most importantly, individual human suffering. We'll definitely be keeping a close eye on how Malaysia proceeds with this review and their discussions with the Myanmar government.
Let's hope that responsible country commitment holds true, and that the lives and safety of these 5,000 individuals, and indeed all refugees, are truly prioritized above all else, because the stakes couldn't be higher.
Indeed. The international community, I think, will be watching closely to see how Malaysia balances its national interests with its moral and international obligations.
And for anyone listening, it's a good reminder to be informed, to challenge misinformation, and to remember the human faces behind these headlines. Their stories matter.
Well said, Caleb. That's all the time we have for today. Thank you, Angelina, Aurora, and Caleb, for breaking down this incredibly complex topic. And thank you to our listeners for tuning in. We'll catch you next time.